Hello and welcome to the FPS+Z podcast, the Z-Axis. It's been a while, so it's about time to come back and let you know about things that are going on in the world of FPS+Z and, well, in arena shooters too. We've got a lot to say about them because we've sort of decided that there is a kinship between the two, as, well, they're all shooters, and we enjoy them very much, and we hope you do too, and we hope you will enjoy what we have to say. Coming up next, I'm Winners with the One. I'm joined by an all-star panel today. We've got Greth. Hello, Greth.
Hello.
And also from Project Freefall is Ignorance. Hello, sir. Sacaid, if you prefer. I never know whether you prefer Ignorance or Sacaid.
Well, it kind of depends on how people know me. Ignorance is I've used forever. Sacaid is something I've picked up recently because Ignorance is being taken in every game known to man, so I have to use a different name.
Okay, well, we'll apply both liberally as we go.
Right, yeah.
BugsPray is here from Project Z, the upcoming Tribes sort of like game. How are you, man?
Hey, doing pretty good. Got to sleep in today, so that's always a good feeling.
Awesome. And we've got Pro Player Fire, who's here to talk about all sorts of games. He's got a list, and he's checked it presumably twice. How are you, man?
Pretty good. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here. And we are, wow, there's a lot going on in the scene, and I guess there are several topics that I know you guys wanted to talk about. We'll just get right into one, and it is the whole thing about matchmaking versus server browsers, because that seems to be a very hot topic right now.
We can go into that. First, I want to kick it off with it's a false dichotomy to phrase it as versus. Definitely want to make sure you include and or when you talk about both, because there's no need to eliminate dedicated servers. There's no need to eliminate matchmaking. You can have both. You have both and something else too. So it's one of those. That's one way to kick it off.
Yeah, I think for me as well, I'm usually against the whole click a button to play. But you need both really eventually. Now, for young games, like especially arena FPS shooters right now, you need to have interaction. You need to have a way to build a community. So you need chat channels, you need voice over IP, you need all those things so people can get to know each other and actually form clans. That's the big problem. That's why I'm usually against, but eventually you need both. But server browsers, I think, are more important than having a nice squeaky clean ranked system.
Well, here's some of my thoughts on matchmaking. I think matchmaking in most games, I can't give an example, but I also can't discount that anybody has experimented with doing better. But most matchmaking, whenever I've seen it, it's been click a button. There might be a couple of options, like I'll use League for example. You've got solo queue, group queue. There's a third one I always forgot, but there's not many options. One idea I've been having for matchmaking, for instance, is hosting the entire thing on IRC. And one of the fun things about that is then you could, if we phrase it like at IRC, you could have channels actually be matchmaking groups, and in that way you could instead of matchmaking for one thing, you could join a whole bunch of channels, and essentially you could just have a matchmaking bot that went around and was like, hey, do you want to play? You got a match ready. You want to play this? That's something I see as a problem with matchmaking. Not so much, it's not that it's bad, it's just that whenever it's implemented, it seems to be kind of lazy.
What you're describing is basically Battle.net, which is how Brood War birthed the esport.
Well, yeah, and funny you say that. Battle.net's based off IRC.
Yeah, it's just an IRC client with a join button,
exactly.
basically.
Okay, can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah, we're good on that.
Okay, cool. Well, let's ask BugsPray, because I know that people in the Project Z community have been curious about this, and it's come up a lot in their forums and whatnot.
Yeah, and this Thursday, I guess it was technically Friday morning, we put out a blog post on our decisions with dedicated servers and matchmaking. And funnily enough, we titled our QA roundup "Dedicated Servers versus Matchmaking" to kind of talk about that dichotomy. I guess they do have a lot of give and take with some of the features and some of the experiences they provide for the players. But like I said in the blog post, ultimately we are deciding to do both and use them in different situations. And I think that, much like Ignorance said, I think there's a lot of room for innovation in having both of those features available. For instance, like what if we were to somehow draw from the player pools of both to populate both? Or there could be a bunch of other kind of options that allow us to kind of make that experience a little bit more, I don't know, like just better quality in general from an FPS+Z perspective. For instance, matchmaking in say like a League of Legends or like a Counter-Strike might be much different than matchmaking for an FPS+Z game, especially one where it's highly role dependent and there are objectives beyond simply KDA and that sort of thing.
Well, the other thing to think of as well is that we're not dealing with having population. All of us are starting off with having a very small population, and matchmaking, it's one of those things where we can talk about the skill patterns and such, but it's when you only have, let's say, 100 people to pick out of, it's a lot more about just getting people together to actually play, because otherwise you can run into the issue where, say you got 100 people playing, they're all in the same time zone, but there's only like 2 people on each server. You run into just spreading everybody thin. So that's a good use for matchmaking, is you can concentrate.
Yeah, but real talk. Okay, matchmaking works great where everybody agrees in something like CSGO, right? The difference is that CSGO has 1 million players at any given time. So statistically, that increases the probability that your matchmaking works. Now, if you've got 100 people, maybe not so much, right?
Yes and no, and this is where talking about the lack of innovation in matchmaking. Whenever you see matchmaking from that actually works, it tends to work in a situation where you have an abundance of players, and so the bottom end of that, where you have a very small amount of players, really hasn't been explored, and so that's where it'd be very useful for anybody in implementing matchmaking, is you really want to experiment with different ways to use matchmaking, because like for instance, using CSGO matchmaking or League matchmaking or any of those games matchmaking, you probably run into problems because those games base on the assumption of we do not have a shortage of players.
Well, let's ask Fire. I know you like a lot of the old school kind of games. Do you even bother with matchmaking much, or do you just jump onto a server browser and find a game and go to it?
I do both, actually. Like, if I'm playing CSGO, I'll look at the server browser to find a more specific kind of server I want to join. Maybe headshot only, something like that. And I also use the matchmaking they have. But I think my opinion on it is, if you're going to do it in a niche game like these, you have to scale it up as the player base grows. So maybe your matchmaking at the start only has two levels of experience for players, like newbies and then people who aren't, and then you scale it up as your population grows. Maybe you have 3 different skill brackets, and then eventually, if you get lucky, you can have it based on ELO or some sort of really hard matchmaking ranking.
Yeah, I think that's going to be a real big problem, especially for FPS+Z games, because calculating the ELO for some people, there's roles in the tribes like that will never register in any sort of statistic. If a capper is K'ing out or whatever. But
this is where I have to disagree with you.
Okay.
In any statistic that you can imagine, that doesn't mean that someone else can't. Because I'll tell you, let's say you could qualitatively rate them as someone higher. Well, here's a way to measure that statistic. Ask the players at the end of matches to rate their peers.
Oh, like who's a good turret farmer and stuff like that?
Yeah, if you come up with a way to survey things, it doesn't even have to be every match, but just a way to get input from players, that's another way to add to ELO, rather. But these are one of those things where it's a lack of current metrics being able to measure things, not so much that they can't be measured. It's one of those, if you can notice it can be measured. You just got to figure out how to narrow it down.
Well, how do you keep one step ahead, though, on that? How do you keep people from gaming that? I mean, because I can see people using that as a troll vector, perhaps.
Well, one question is that a problem? It's one of those, not all systems are subject to problems with people gaming the system, just in that gaming the system may not actually have if you design a system that doesn't show results from people gaming a system, then it is less prone to that. You catch my drift?
I think so.
I mean, it's definitely something you got to consider. You don't want to be willy-nilly and just be like, yeah, we're going to totally accept input, although you might, and then you just might have people also accept input on bullshit and just accept the bullshit meter a bit better. But, yeah.
I think with that, one thing you could do, one option, which a lot of people might not actually like, is to hide the matchmaking rankings of people so people don't learn how to game the system, or at least it's more difficult to learn how to do that.
Another option is to just use that feedback in other ways aside from ranking people. Like League of Legends does this thing with like honoring opponents and saying that teammates were helpful or things like that. And the reporting system was solely to penalize other players, and it's something that like they look at over time and have that council or whatever it was. But it doesn't necessarily need like attached to ELO, but it could also attach to other things. Marked as a troll from different people, then he will get paired with other trolls, and they can go have their troll game, and everyone else can enjoy much higher quality games.
Oh yeah, like a purgatory for assholes. Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the whole Titanfall thing. The Titanfall thing where they, instead of banning the hackers, they just put them into a server together.
I'm telling you,
that's
first AAA game that what they need to do is they need to take all the cheater funds from their games, and then they need to have a player haters ball and just have all the cheaters fund it. You catch what I'm saying? First AAA game to do this, it'll be awesome.
CSGO could probably make a lot of money from that.
Yeah.
So just as a question here, do we all kind of agree that matchmaking with large player populations is a good idea, or is that something that's still kind of in contention?
I absolutely think it is.
As an option, I dislike when server browsers get removed from the equation, but for sure, matchmaking is a great addition to a game.
Absolutely. I think it's imperative in modern gaming. I think it's just one of those things that people expect, that they say that your game is broken, even on crusty old places like ESR, and we'll get to them in a minute. They're adamant that if your game does not have matchmaking, then it is not a game. So I think you have to at least make some sort of concessions toward that. But yes, I agree that there needs to be some sort of way that you can also, it took a while for Tribe of Sin to do this, but they did it, put a server browser in for people who are like me and just like to say, okay, a bunch of people are playing here, or this is where my friends are, I'm going here.
Yeah.
And to address ESR, it's kind of matchmaking at its most basic level. It fulfills the role that IRC already does for a lot of people, which is just being like, oh, hey, look, there's 5 people online. You guys want to do some ZTF? Or, just, it doesn't even need to be skill-based at its most basic level. It's just simply grouping people.
Yeah.
And having to do that manually sucks. Go for it.
Because the thing with the saying that, no, without any sort of matchmaking, there's no game. The problem is, though, like I said before, matchmaking has the potential to alienate people and also never get a human factor in the community. If the ESR guys think that, then that's fine. If everyone goes to the same game, they've been fighting for years over whether to go to Warsaw or Zonotic or whatever. Yeah, if everyone joins the same game, you have a big group, then yeah, it's gonna be fine. Then you can just say, fuck it, I'm just gonna play a game. If you, however, have a couple of favorited servers, then you can try and create a bond. That's how I got back in the Call of Duty 1 days, for instance, get a clan. That's how you did it. Play on the same server, get to know a couple of people. And the IRC is a good example of that, but nobody is going to go to IRC anymore. Not today. You need to have that included in the game, and you need to have some kind of human interaction, which is something that the AAA games are moving away from. Like, look at Hearthstone, for instance, is all matchmaking. It's all quick, get a game real quickly, and there's literally no human communication anymore except for some voice binds. So for us, in our situation, it would be wonderful once we have 2,000 concurrent players on every game. But right now, in the very near future, we do need to prioritize server browsers over matchmaking, because you first need to get some regulars.
Well, at the
Okay.
very least, I mean, server browser. I'll let everybody know who's developing a game. Freefall server browser is going to be. I'll be releasing the code and the update for it sometime and probably over this next week. And so, for anybody that wants a server browser, they just copy and paste that. It's kind of the reason I'm putting it out. But that's where I think you can have both, because a server browser is a cakewalk. Once it's written by one person, you just copy it. Otherwise, a matchmaking, I see it being very useful for a small population, just because a good thing about a small population at the beginning is that, at least I've noticed, the skill doesn't matter as much, just because the people playing tend to be at least a bit more familiar with shooters to begin with, and maybe even arena shooters, So it tend to be a little bit better.
Okay, and thanks to our friend Blitz, who asked that question in the FPS+Z subreddit, which you can find on Reddit at r/FPSZ. Another vector topic, I suppose, is BugsPray pointing this out: player-hosted dedicated servers versus game-hosted dedicated servers.
I think this is another one of those things where the best option is definitely to have both. To have have people be able to host their own servers, and to have servers hosted by the company, like pretty much what CS:GO does.
Yeah, I mean, Valve did a really good job, because they did before with TF2 as well. But basically, not having player dead servers killed Call of Duty as a sport, basically. Even though the game itself was really killing itself already, but that's a very disturbing thing in AAA, that you won't host the servers. It's all going to be controlled by the developer. You can't have. Well, the same thing, it adds with mod support, right? It's right up there. If you don't have mod support and you don't have players hosting their own servers, your game won't last. It's that simple.
Yeah, and so I know Project Freefall is definitely going to offer player-hosted dedicated servers. I can say that our arena shooter, #Wrecked from Hell Legit Games, shipped with a player-hosted server software from its earliest beginnings, and always will. BugsPray, what are you guys' thoughts as far as Project Z? Are you guys going to have more of a centralized thing, or will people be able to run their own servers?
We haven't landed 100% on a decision on that. We're kind of analyzing the benefits of both, and clearly, I know I personally have benefited from having servers that we host on our own, just throughout the Tribe series, and plus getting the admin on that first server that someone else owns is always a great feeling. But yeah, we're also looking at some of the benefits of having it all controlled by just us. Which is, there's benefits in patching. You control the user experience. Because one of the worst things in the world is having a noob come in and playing Ultra Ren on your T1 server, right? They're not going to know what's going on or why this is even a fun game.
You see, that's where I think matchmaking has a lot of ground to make up, is that you can keep people away from the crazy My Little Pony mods, at least initially.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, it's something we haven't 100% landed on, but it's something we're thinking pretty hard about.
Okay, because I know that Malur is asking here also, will there be a maximum number of friends you can queue up with in matchmaking, like a party system? And I guess that kind of goes along with that as well.
Yeah, the design specifics for Project Z on that also haven't been decided, but we know we want to allow full teams to be able to go and find a match-made game. So I'd say at least in terms of whatever our final team size is for matchmaking, imagine you being able to queue up with that many people.
Something else that I just was thinking you might consider adding is ability for teams to request ringers. Something that could go over well, just having solo people that maybe they're ranked well or something like that, and a team could request a ringer, and if there's anybody that's waiting, they could get pulled in.
Well, as Greth said, nobody uses IRC anymore, but one way that we could get people to do IRC is to incorporate it into the client like good old Tribes did.
Yeah, it's the easiest thing in the world, and it's required, I think, especially in the stage we're at right now. It's people won't download MIRC anymore. They're just scared. What is this, you know? And they have good reason to, because there's a lot of scary people on IRC. They've been camping out there for the last 15 years, 20 years. But yeah,
there is some truth to that, indeed.
I mean, come on. Can you invite a 50-year-old to Tribal War IRC? Can you? Is that a crime? I think it might be a federal one.
Depends on what country you're in, probably.
Well, we certainly saw some new people highly discouraged from playing the game. And I'm sorry, because I know some of those are your friends, guys, but they did. They ran people right the hell off from, that came in and hey, I like this game, and this is where I was told to. Oh yeah, well, why don't you go kill yourself? So yeah, IRC is a tough nut to crack, and that brings us to Darkseed's question from the forums here. Your thoughts on making an FPS game accessible to newcomers while keeping the gameplay challenging, deep, and complex? That is a very tough question and a good one, I think.
Also matchmaking.
Yeah,
also matchmaking. That's the answer.
Right, so I think no, we laughed about the matchmaking thing, and then I said my thing, and I think that was good because I said it.
All right, let's start from the question again. Winners, are you good there?
I believe so. Yes.
So we're gonna start from that question again from Darkseed.
Yes. Your thoughts on making an FPS+Z game accessible to newcomers while keeping the gameplay challenging, deep, and complex.
Okay, so my reply would be a short mandatory tutorial. Even before they get into the whole online thing, just to get them acquainted with everything going on in the game, so they didn't just rush in and forget how to ski or something.
Yeah, so I think a tutorial system is something that no one has really, well, at least from Tribes Ascend and some of the other games I've played, no one has really done a really good job with.
Quake Live, I think, is a great tutorial system for everybody to look at. Like, that's one of the best tutorials I've seen. The only thing it needs paired with it is a video to actually demonstrate to people how to do strafe jumping, but
that's something Reflex is doing, actually. I think they have the jump maps, and they're going to put in some sort of video that shows you how to do it.
Is it Too Good that's doing Reflex, or is he doing Reborn?
The Reflex
that's Reborn.
Is a guy called Newborn. It's an Australian dev team, I believe.
Yeah, well, Too Good, I mean, for example, Too Good did like the best strafe jumping tutorial video there is, and I thought at first that they were just going to use that.
Yeah, I mean, the thing with the regular coming into Quake Live and doing a little bit against Crash and everything, that's great. But then, of course, the advanced movement stuff is a little tucked away, and you're getting thrown into that without any sort of way of getting it. But that's, of course, more of a flaw with Quake Live or Quake in general, because strafe jumping is now, let's face it, a lost art of the bygone era, because there's nothing else out there anymore that does it. So I think especially for FPS+Z games and Reflex now, it's easier there's a lot of advanced stuff in Reflex, but the standard getting to a point of being fast in Reflex is actually easier, I think, because it's CPM. So that'll help them out.
Yeah, so the one option that you can look at there is you have a mandatory tutorial, but then you have extra tutorials, more advanced stuff it's not mandatory, but it's still there. It's branched out. It's easy to find.
Yeah, it should be in your face. It should be right on the front page. Hey, you haven't completed the advanced tutorials yet, and guess what? You'll get this new bright, shiny skin if you do. That's the way to do it.
Yeah.
Here's another way.
Something you reward people.
Frame it like Defrag. Just make a game out of the tutorials. I mean, there's plenty of things you do, but it's like just make it think like arcade style. Try and get the highest score.
Yeah, I talked about something like this. Actually, Legions had something that was going into this territory where they had timed trials where you had to go through hoops and stuff, and I really like that. Like certain like Defrag, they have like world records and they have tournaments and stuff on who can get the best time. I think that's, oh god.
Just keep going. We've got recordings.
Okay. Yeah, so I think that's a good option, especially for a Tribes game.
That's one thing that I really got frustrated at with Tribes Ascend, really, is that the tutorials they provided are like, I wanna, but I don't wanna kind of thing. Like, it really didn't show anything. The main thing, like disc jumping, for instance, wasn't even in a tutorial. You had to do, even my video of all things was posted inside the game client, like, this is how you do it. And that's really, really sad, because if you go into the public service back in the day, everyone was there were people playing it like Call of Duty. That's the saddest thing. They didn't even press the freaking ski button. So, especially because an FPS+Z game kind of has simple mechanics compared to an arena shooter. So you don't have all the strafe jumping. You don't have to dance with your mouse. It's just press a button and press the other button, and that's the movement. So,
it's worth adding to that, though, that people play Quake like Call of Duty. It's just a common problem in games that have a high skill curve, is that you get players that join up and, for reasons that I can't be sure of, just don't quite comprehend that there's more to the game than what they have or used to playing. Like, it just seems like there's a disconnect where they're just like, yeah, this is like whatever game I'm used to playing, and so they just putter around and shoot people rather than exploring the movement system.
Yeah, and I think right now there's also a problem with a lot, because I saw someone playing Quake live on stream, a little small stream, and he was top of his little group of friends, and the only thing he did was run around, never jumped once, and only used a shotgun off of the spawn loadout. So, and then he got confronted with people who actually played the game, and to him they were like the most monstrously hacking people of all time, because he couldn't comprehend that there was actually advanced movement in this game.
Because he encountered a god.
Yeah, exactly. And he wasn't even, he was a lower mid-level,
User in your
now
channel
a very low player. He just knew how to use the jump key, which is amazing these days.
I think one other strategy is kind of in just your message about your game that you give out to people before they even play it. Like, if the only trailer available pretty highly showcases how you're supposed to play the game, and that's their first experience for most people, right?
I heavily agree with you there.
Well.
I think the before someone plays a game aspect is very underemphasized, because I think if you can manage to get someone to appreciate a game before they play it, at least I feel there'll probably be a stronger chance that they'll be willing to tough through some learning experiences.
Yeah, absolutely. And even exposing them to, say, like, high-level play through creative ways, whether it's, on the intro to your game, there's a cutscene you cannot click through no matter what after you've just installed it, and it's showcasing high-level play with announcers, like whatever that is, right? But something where they now have a concept of the baseline expectation of gameplay, and they know what it's like at a high level, too.
Is there something that Reflex does that's really cool, is when you actually load up the game, their background screen is a player playing.
That's actually, yeah, I was going to hop into that. That's it's neat that someone else was thinking along the same lines, but yeah, having demos in the background would be great, especially because demos are something that you can kind of send out. You could have weekly demos, monthly demos, but essentially you could put out to where the client plays like a best of list of demos that people are going to be viewing.
It's playing clips in the background, it's high level clips, and it's actually stylized really nice so that it's not a burden to watch.
The only thing it needs is a mute button, because that's annoying after a while.
I will tell you a trick for everybody watching this podcast. If you're really annoyed with Reflex's screen and stuff and all the sounds that are going on there, but one thing you can do is you can actually go into the local files and delete the music, which was really loud for me at least, so I had to get rid of it.
Yeah, that's of course early access game and all that, because all the config stuff is, Quake players love it. But for a new player to get in there, you're confronted, it's scary. That's doesn't really matter, because Reflex has its goal right now, and it has time to grow and to polish itself for a new audience. I think, like I said, Toxic, their launch, they had the film going on. I had to complain about that a little bit, but Toxic did it real well. Like, here you go, except for the whole forgetting to turn off mouse smoothing, but, forgiven. It's okay.
So Reflex, when it came out, it was pretty early into it. Well, it wasn't really too early, but it was at a good point to put it out. But there is one or two things that I thought they could have had, like lag compensation, which they have in game now, and also that options menu that they don't have.
Yeah.
Detailed options, the key binds and stuff.
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure they don't have it yet.
That's because the whole early access thing. What is early access and what is pre-alpha and what is pre-alpha and what is alpha and what is sort of beta, but
And what can everybody deal with?
yeah, I mean if you go into it right now, like, because this is one thing I want to throw out there as well, is that we are, as a scene right now, we can't think about going after, because we keep using CSGO and League of Legends and everything. We should really just stop doing that. We just have to say, listen, we are going to cultivate maybe 2,000 or 3,000 people across the entire scene in this year. And then when Unreal Tournament hits, it's probably going to be a bit more. Even for Z games, we just have to take everything and pile it together. For the people who would be interested, who were interested 15 years ago, the type of people who was interested in it now, I don't think it's not too bad to have a bare bones game. Because the regular Call of Duty and League of Legends players, they're not even going to get in touch with this kind of game. I think, because I actually wrote an article about it recently, the Rats Instagib game, for instance, is a very good way of introducing people to what this whole thing is, because a lot of people back in 2004 never even left the Instagib servers, or even in 99, Quake Instagib was a bit more obscure, I think, than Unreal Tournament, but for them that's a nice introduction, going like, hey, there might be something better out there.
Yeah, I love Instagib, and sorry about my connection, guys. Of course, when we're doing a podcast, this is when it pops in and out. Are we making an assumption that Unreal Tournament 4 is going to be big?
I hope not. I hope nobody has any false impressions that it's going to be big. Like, if that's a big game, it'll be very surprising.
Well, that's what I keep hearing from a bunch of people, is that, well, just wait till Unreal Tournament 4 comes in, and then it's going to be bigger than Quake and CSGO, and it's going to take over the world. Are we still talking about a niche kind of game here?
Well, and something to bring up there is bigger than Quake, bigger than CSGO. We're talking about probably 2 or 3 orders of magnitude difference between those two games. Bigger than Quake is easy. Bigger than CSGO, not so much.
No, that's important.
Yeah, well, let me have my hyperbole here, but yes.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. Unreal Tournament has to be big in order for our scene to be bigger. You have to work together with it. You need to support it. You need to provide content for it, because it's us, and mainly I'm looking at this channel right now, especially us, needs to make sure that that scene is there. You need to help it out. It's not going to be CSGO. It's not going to be League of Legends. That's going to take years. Or it might escalate, it might have an exponential growth there somewhere, but there needs to be some kind of platform for it to work on. So Unreal 4 is going to be the biggest of the lot, all right, of the scene right now.
Yeah, I do believe. I think it's going to be most likely to succeed of the few arena shooters that are out there.
Yeah, is that just based on name recognition? I know Fire has played a lot of this game, so.
Well, it's based on some other things too. I think their rate of content they're putting out. I guess you guys haven't really been following it, but there's a lot of maps and there's a lot of stuff that they've been putting out. And their business model is, I would say, it follows the Dota 2 business model closest, where it's going to be completely free, and then they're going to have a cosmetic marketplace that community creators can sell their own stuff, and they can sell their own stuff.
Well, yeah, the other thing is that Epic is like Valve. They don't have to care if their game nets them money. They can just do things.
Yeah. And
that gives them a lot more leeway compared to, like, going back to the AAA games. Greth made the comment that they've been completely abandoning dedicated servers and things that would allow for a community to form, and that way they peter off. Well, I actually think AAA games, that might be in their interest to do so. They release a game every year, every 2 years, so what's the point? However, for Epic, because they're kind of like Valve, they're probably not so pressured. But the other thing is that Epic, unlike the rest of us in here, has boatloads of money in their bank.
Right,
Yes,
and
so
we all
for-
have an interest in it doing well because, let's face it, all of us in here are working on games that are using that engine.
Yeah, so for Valve, it's Steam, that it brings users to Steam. Even if they didn't make money on Dota 2, it could make money in other ways. And then I think for Unreal Tournament 4, it's like a tech demo for their engine. And it brings a lot of value to their engine for other people trying to develop their own games in it.
I think Unreal Tournament 4, it's also a vessel for them to learn how to improve their engine. They're going through the same hardships that we are, and you run into those problems. You go, oh, I didn't know this was an issue. And so you fix them just through making games.
Yeah, there's even an IRC channel where you can talk to the coders directly if you're developing in Unreal 4. So
You could actually ask them to play a game with you and stuff. They'll come in and they'll play with you, which is pretty cool.
That is cool.
That's very cool.
And their podcast is weekly, and they put out a lot of content on there. There's like one of their most recent ones. They were showing these what they called Lego pieces, which are assets that anybody can use for their maps and anybody can use for any game. That it's just there to play around with, make maps.
And this is the Beyond Unreal podcast?
Now, this is the official.
Oh, okay. So this
Epic.
is the dev podcast. Okay.
Yeah, and there's a lot to talk about regarding arena shooters. I guess we should quickly round up some of the things that are going on, and specifically the FPS+Z. I know that there was some talk about Project Next. There was a thread earlier this week. Is this game still being worked on? Is it dead, etc.? And there was some, let's say, lightly salted talk between some of the developers and the community, but they did come out and say that yes, the game is still being worked on, and they still plan on releasing it. In fact, they put out the prototype yesterday, I believe, thanks to Neepal and our friends at Arena FPS. They helped make that available.
yeah, so the Project Next, I think in terms of PR, they should have known better. But yeah, I think people are probably saying the same thing about Project Freefall. Like, we haven't posted on our forums or anything,
User
or
in your
shown
channel
any
timed out.
any.
Well, it's
final
one of
life.
those, at the very
It's
least,
dev.
hopefully we've weeded out people that have that kind of hope. Just be like, yeah, we're going along at our own pace. We got things going. I think that's Project Next. If anything, that's what their release schedule looks like as well.
Yeah,
And when I
they
say
went
there,
really
I don't
fast.
even...
Yeah, they went from suddenly the green light announcement, and boom, yeah, everything is next for 2 or 3 weeks, and then, you know, and
Yeah.
in terms of dev, yeah, you finish that prototype, you show the world, and then you're like, oh, okay, fine, I can now finally relax and build a little bit when I have time, you know? Same thing with Freefall when we went over to Unreal 4, like, get map done and show people, okay, good. And then, you know, other things. So this is why we're not being paid for the work we're doing, and yet. So, yeah.
Great. Okay.
Yeah, we carried on from your conversation, don't worry.
Wonderful.
Going. Yeah, so Project Next is in a weird spot. Same with Toxic almost, but I think Toxic kind of beat them to the punchline. Where when they started developing their games, they didn't know that Unreal Tournament was going to be developed at all. They were under the assumption that Epic actually said, they came out and said that there probably won't be a new UT
And then
anytime soon. And then they announced one, yeah. Which must kind of suck. But I think Toxic, they have a nice marketing strategy with their video. If you've seen Strafe, that game kind of is doing the same thing. You know, it's doing a retro kind of frag, like it's 98, 96, whatever.
Yeah, the Strafe. Yeah, actually, I watched it the other day. That was
That's
pretty
gonna
funny.
be single player though, isn't it? It's not.
Yeah,
Yes,
but
yes.
their marketing tactics
Yeah,
are
it was
both
beautiful.
really similar. And so Toxic hit that window. I think Next is kind of out of it.
And that was one of the things that one of the next guys was saying, is that when they started developing their game, they had no idea that all these other games were going to be coming out with similar. And I can say that too with us for #Rect. We had no idea that when we started developing it, We developed it mainly because we wanted a fun game to play. We didn't realize that all these other arena shooters were going to be starting to be developed at the same time.
Yeah, but it's a good thing though. I mean, yeah, it's really sucks for a lot of the developers, but you know, have this convergence of games, and it's a very important thing. And it's hopefully, if we're not all going to bite off each other's heads, that bring it together a little bit. Because the thing with Nex is, yeah, they're going to be competing with Toxic, which is already playable, which is already being talked about. Toxic itself is going to require some amazing things. I mean, they need to not wait too long for another map, or especially the vehicle mode that they actually marketed on that isn't even in the game yet, because they're losing hype. And that's the thing that I'm really scared about for a lot of these games. Like, for instance, Wickland. I'm going to try and promote Wickland as much as possible, because that's a game
that game's awesome.
It's amazing, but it's not Unreal Tournament, it's not Quake, it's actually doing something different. And
it's almost like Painkiller.
It's
the vibe.
It's got a vibe to it. The movement feels a little like that as well, and especially in terms of art style, it's completely up there with Painkiller. But that's why a lot of people are just ignoring it. Even high-profile people are just saying, "Nah, I'm not even going to look at that because that's Unreal," or they see everything they don't like in a game, and we can't do that. So for Nyx, I think their problem is that their movement system is going to be too complex. There's going to be too much in there, and I think that with the amount of speed, you get speed too easily, and I think it's going to trivialize the movement a little bit, but we'll see. Yeah,
well, I think a point that needs to be taken to heart by everybody is that it's going to be a very crowded scene. When an arena FPS, essentially, if you have anybody that's very familiar with the mechanics and has done map making before, if you give them a month, they can program an arena shooter in Unreal 4. Like, it's the barrier to entry to be able to make something that's playable and actually can be fun is very, very low. And then when you can take into account that the asset store is only getting better and better and better, the polish of these games is likely to improve as well. So I think it just do well for us to all start planning for, well, if there's going to be a bunch of games, what could we do to kind of like benefit everybody?
Absolutely. And see, Greth has been evangelizing that, and I wholeheartedly agree that there's really we don't need to be focusing as much on competition as much as supporting each other and getting people re-interested in these games again, so we're not playing with the same 10 people
and
over and
interested in playing multiple games.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I think that's very important, and Greth has done a lot of work to try to get people on the same page as that. And, here we are in this podcast with two competing tribes-like games, and you guys are all in here talking. I think, and then you get the people that are like, well, why don't you just all get together and make a super game with all your, well, if you know anything about
ideas.
Development, yeah, that's a non-starter, folks. So all you can do is just hope to, support as many games as you can in this genre, because it's good for everybody.
Well, another thing to look at is you might start thinking of these games more like you would think about modded servers back in, I think, like early 2000s, late 90s, because these games are kind of, you can almost think of them as premium servers where the game's been modified so much that although they might be similar, they're quite different in how they play. In this case, these are distinctly different games, but because they're all so similar and because there's so many of them, it's kind of you can make the comparison.
Yeah, and I think what's also very important for our project is that BugsPray is probably going to be first with his game, and then we just pick up the pieces when he falls apart.
Hey.
Oh my. Okay. Well, speaking of Project Z, Malur had some questions I think you guys wanted to address.
So if someone wants to read them out loud.
All right.
Well, there are several of them, and since you brought it up multiple times, I thought that you had some specific ones you wanted to go over here.
Oh, no,
okay, but we can look at them now.
This is actually very
these are very specific kind of questions. Thoughts on match length, max cap score, will there be a pause feature?
This is all balance related, really, isn't it?
Oh well, yeah, these are really specific.
Yeah, this seems. I don't know about you guys, but this seems like it's pretty to be decided for most of those.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is actually a good one. Are you guys going to stick with a specific size of map for consistency, or do you like the variety? I really
That is a good one.
because I'm a map guy. But so yeah, I'm actually interested if you guys can tell me, are you going to stick with a smaller map, or just say balls to the wall, let's max out the resolution on everyone's computer?
Yeah, I think it just kind of depends on what works, really. I don't think we're going to be saying, like, no, we're not going to make maps above a certain size, because it could be that if you make it in the right way, that it actually plays really well. So I don't think we have, like, lines in the sand on that by any regard. And it also depends on the game type, too, right?
Okay.
Yeah,
have you guys given any thought to your pay model? Is it going to be free to play?
Yeah, so
early access, pay a few bucks things.
Yeah, we have. So our game is going to be.
I think
free to
we
play.
asked you this before.
Yeah, our game is going to be free to play, and we're actually in the process of writing up a blog post now on the details of that. So
That's
that
new to
will
me.
that will come out soon. TM, probably in the next couple weeks.
I'm glad you guys chose that. I know you guys were on the fence between that and the CS:GO. You $10, $15 short, small entry fee, and then you have other microtransactions or whatever. I think free to play those the way to go.
Yeah, I think we may end up getting a little creative with that, like depending on where we're at in our development cycle and that sort of thing. But yeah, we'll release more details about that soon.
So yeah, well, just go for the Path of Exile model and not the TA model.
Oh, good lord, no, it's so I can confirm right now
model.
it's not going to be pay to win. We are not going to be limiting gameplay features based on
Awesome.
on that sort of stuff.
An insta-gib weapon you can unlock for $15. That's actually a surprise.
So this actually could be a really good segue
well,
for
let's
me.
see what else we got here. I can tell you that we
Ignorance is
just did our
Yeah.
hashtag Rect tournament
Winners, chill
a
out.
couple of weeks ago.
Perfect segue.
Yes.
Bitcoin. Talking about payment models. I've been musing on Bitcoin for the past couple months, and there is a lot to look at critically. It opens up a new payment model that could be very interesting for multiplayer gaming. I don't know how familiar everybody here is with payment models, but essentially with credit cards, there tends to be a lower limit of around $5 is the minimum transaction fee that you can, or minimum transaction you can have. Whereas with Bitcoin, the minimum transaction you can have is around 5 cents. And this is interesting for multiplayer gaming because it opens up a door for pay to play. Like, just like an arcade, just like anything like that, join a game to play the game, pay 10 cents. I know 10 cents gives you 15 minutes, for example. And Bitcoin can handle this very well. It's not only is it very secure, like you can know that payments are going through, it's robust. You don't have to worry about the payment model falling apart. You don't have to also worry about somebody getting pissed off because you're making a ton of transaction amounts. But I think for a payment model, it's something that everybody should at least be aware of, because this could be a way to kind of to make it to where you can have money in a game to actually have value, and make it to where it's not value that's like buying the game. Its value is in just time you spend playing it. Because that's one of the issues with games. Let's say upfront cost, your game costs $20. That is a barrier to entry. Whereas, let's say the game is free, but you pay to play. That's an interesting way to do it. All you need is a Bitcoin wallet. And the other nice thing about wallets is they are unique identifiers. So something I've been thinking on is you can identify players with the Bitcoin wallet, and you could of course have other identifiers with them, but it is a basic way to track players is through a wallet. Then building off of that, if you've got wallets, because Bitcoin, it's different from other payment systems in that all the other existing payment systems, except for physical cash, they're based on somebody requesting money from you, and the transaction handler handling that transaction, whereas Bitcoin is based on you giving money to someone, just like you would on the street. So it's interesting because you can have servers. You can actually set it up to where servers are the collectors of payment, and you can then do interesting things where you can have servers that maybe it's a very popular server, and to pay their server fees, they actually don't need to collect that much from people. So let's say they pay 10 cents and they get an hour of play. And let's say you got a different server where maybe they might not have so many players, but the people who do play are willing to pay more. Maybe you can have them pay. Maybe you can still have them pay 10 cents, but maybe they only get 5 minutes, or maybe they get 10. But Bitcoin's a very interesting payment medium. Anybody have some thoughts so far?
I think you're going to have a whale of a time trying to explain the whole idea and not being completely generalized with the freemium games on iPads and stuff. Because
I think that's a model that maybe could work in like Korea, where they have PC bangs and stuff, where that pretty much is what they do. But I think people in America and Europe, I think they're really against that.
I mean,
pay for time played.
As a possible thing, as something that's in there as well, apart from the traditional things to do. But I still think you need to have 100% free area of the game as well. So if you have, if a server host says, okay, I want to have this payment model, then activate it through the game, then that's fine, of course, but not as a be-all and end-all to the game, because that is still
the point.
5-something years before it gets anywhere.
Actually, no, it doesn't. This is something that can be done right now, and actually for Freefall is now on the not the short-term list of things to do, but the medium-term list of things to do. Because I agree with you, the idea for paying for things for a lot of people is a bit sketchy, at least here in America. I don't know about a lot of other people, but the thing
gets laughed at a lot. I mean,
that's the thing is though, is you don't even need people to understand that it's being used by Bitcoin. You don't actually have to even show this. For example, someone mentioned having it to where maybe you pay an upfront $5 to play a game. Well, let's say that you pay that $5, and instead of you paying $5, what it is actually is you are buying $5 in Bitcoin. And then to play games, you have $5 already in your account. And at that point, all you're doing is whenever you join a server, if it's a free server, because that's the thing, you could have free servers, but the issue is that at the end of the day, it costs money to run stuff. And that's something that since day one for multiplayer games, running servers and the upkeep costs for things has been a problem. And it's one of those things where it's when the population grows, you tend to have a lot more leeway. But as soon as it starts diminishing, there's a point where it's just like, well, we can't even run these servers anymore. It costs too much money. So you can have the players that want to play directly fund a server. And you can have them directly fund a server without having to pay like $15. That $5 minimum. See, that's one of those things. A lot of people laugh at the having to pay for things, but the thing is, nobody's experienced being able to pay for things like at an arcade level. Just think about it: a dime, 10 cents, 11 cents. That is such a small amount. Nobody has actually tested that area. And so, I mean, I'm with you. It could be an issue, but I say that you can't completely disregard it because it's never existed online.
So I have a few thoughts on Bitcoin here. I'm not gonna say when we were first talking about Project Z and that kind of stuff back in the day, we were thinking about creative monetization models. One of the thoughts we had was still keep the free-to-play model, but allow people to automatically generate Bitcoin that went directly into their accumulation of in-game currency to spend on items. And we ended up not doing this. So yeah, disclaimer, we are not doing this. This is not part of the roadmap because economically it doesn't work out in benefit of the consumer. But it was just an idea that we had kind of thrown around where, when you install a game, there's a little box that says, do you want to, unchecked of course, but do you want to install the Project Z Bitcoin miner and then have it automatically generate currency for you in the game? Well, you can basically watch it go up depending on market value of Bitcoin.
So you were thinking of having a miner attached to it that people could operate.
Yeah, and this idea came out of that ill-conceived ESEA scandal that happened a while back, where that one guy just embedded it in there. But like if it were upfront and clear and economically beneficial to the consumer, then it could be an interesting model where you could have people who just don't actually spend, like they don't take money out of their wallet and put it into the game, but they just sit there and then over time can buy their skins or buy whatever they need to do.
Well, so here's an interesting, similar thing there with Bitcoin is going back to if you tie player accounts to a Bitcoin wallet, that means that a player can be given money. They can be tipped. They can be essentially funds can be transacted to them. Handy for pro players and such. Just interesting thing. You could have pros. One thing I was talking about with the fun with. Let's say they wanted to offer to teach people for a small fee. You just send them a fee and they could teach you. Other things. Let's say you've got a server that's it's a noob friendly server. And the server charges by time. So let's say that an interval is 10 minutes, and they just give me 10 cents for 10 minutes. Example. Let's say it's a noob server, and so they don't want the high-skilled players playing, or at the very least, if somebody's skilled, they don't want them just raking in frags off people. What you can do is you can individualize the rates, and you monitor for outliers. You go, I don't want that outlier, so you charge them more. The benefit of charging them more is that you can do experiment with things. You go, well, so-and-so is getting charged more. If that simply doesn't work, you just have them start paying for the entire game. The point is that when you introduce a flow of money but that is expected between players and a server, you introduce options for shaping a community that's also never existed. It's like one of the issues with making noob servers and skilled servers is really the only way to enforce those is through moderation. Whereas you can now, if you set it up, if you can successfully set it up where you have people paying to play and it's an acceptable rate, you can then use that payment to also aid in shaping it. And the nice thing about that is that's something you can do automated. It doesn't need moderation. You can actually just have a bot that runs through that. And the other nice thing is that people actually can't steal your money. You have to accept the rate to, like, you actually have to send the person the money to be able to play. So it's nice because it's different from credit. It doesn't have that problem.
Yeah, it's all very interesting. I can see that being a thing of the future. But yeah, what other topics have we got before we start wrapping this thing up, guys? Anything else that we want to bring up?
Low population and 24/7 play. I want to bring that up.
Okay.
Some thoughts about, it's an issue that everybody's going to have. And I wanted to at least bring it up, the idea that having servers listed 24/7, 365 days a year it should not be expected to be the default best way to go. Just in that, I don't know if we were recording, we mentioned it, but we were talking about how that kind of spreads a community very thin. Experimenting with displaying servers is something I think everybody should at least consider. Just one idea, for instance, let's say you have a master server that only lists servers 15 minutes every hour. That operates, if you have that set up, that can operate as a congregation point for a community. Matches start on the hour, servers list on the hour, and then 15 minutes later they're taken off listing or something. But ideas like that, because I think Reflex right now is a good example of, there's people playing, but there's nobody playing together, or there's hardly anybody playing together.
Yeah, I've thought about this too before. I think especially when you put out a demo or something, when you put out early access, I think scheduled playtests is something people should really look at, like twice a week at this hour, so you ensure that people are going to be waiting and ready to play. But
yeah.
That's absolutely right. Yes, and that's why we have Rec Tuesday on Tuesdays, where everybody comes and they know that they'll be able to find a game on Tuesday. I know, talking to Dave from Rise of the Triad, they have Saturday Night Rot, and he said that pretty much saved the game. So you know that on Saturday night there'll be people to play Rise of the Triad with.
Yeah, I hadn't heard about that. It's awesome because I bought that game because it's fun.
But yeah, with my intermittent internet, luckily I'm back on in time to. I think we've been talking about an hour and we've gotten some good things to discuss, and hopefully the community will enjoy discussing them further as we put this out on the various websites, FPSZ.com and the FPSZ subreddit. Any final thoughts from everybody, Greth?
Well, I'm just happy that we can discuss both the tiny little niche that is the FPS-Z, which is currently Freefall and Project Z, and then also, of course, all the other things in the scene, the arena FPS shooters that will probably have to prepare the scene for us when we finally do get our games out there. So yeah, it's gonna be, like I said, I really like the word convergence. I really like to use that.
Mm-hmm.
Everything's gonna come together, and it's probably going to happen in 2015, depending on when Epic drops the bomb. So yeah, let's all share lovely, and get this thing going and kill the evil overlords over at Counter-Strike and League of Legends and Dota and shit. They must die. Good.
Yes, MOBAs are the devil, yes. And shout out to Critical Gaming, by the way, who won the #Rec tournament. I don't know if I got to get that in before I got cut off a while ago. But yes, we had a pretty good tournament a couple of weeks ago. They won 2 copies of Evolve, so shout out to 187 and Fiend, the winners of the #Rec tournament, courtesy of the DGL. Ignorance, your final thoughts?
Well, I mean, we've talked about a bunch of stuff. Mainly, anybody
We can
who's
say
interested
shit
in-
here.
Yeah, well,
channel.
I didn't actually want to say it. That's the thing. I was like, I don't know. It was one of those weird situations where I didn't want to say it. I wanted to say stuff. Anybody who's interested in Freefall, I know it's been a while since the last tech demo. The master server, I had a bunch of problems with low level in the engine. Sorted those out. So we'll be testing the master server code this week and expect, provided nothing catastrophic is wrong, which probably it won't be, but I can never be sure, that a tech demo will be out sometime by the end of next week, I imagine.
Awesome. We'll be looking for that for sure. BugsPray, your final thoughts?
Not a whole lot, but I wanted to say thanks to everybody who's been jumping in on the Project Z threads and asking questions and giving feedback. It's been great, and we take it all into account. So keep doing so.
Awesome, yeah. And if you're on IRC, go to QuakeNet and go idle in the Archetype IRC, because there's always something happening in there. Some good conversations in there lately. Fire, your final thoughts, man.
I just wanted to say, if you're listening to this, be a multi-game gamer. Try out some of these things. My personal picks for you, my recommendations are Reflex, Unreal Tournament 4, but of course there's tons more. There's #Rec, there's Toxic, all these games. Try them out, play them. Tribes 1 and Tribes 2. If you're a Tribes Ascent player, they're hard to get into, but very rewarding. And that's all.
Yeah, and we'll be doing more of these podcasts coming up very soon. We just wanted to kind of update everybody on things that were going on and talk about some of the things that are pertinent right now. And so thank you to everybody who sent in questions. Hopefully we got them answered the best we could. If not, we'll talk about them further in the forums. And check out the website, fps-z.com, I believe it's how it's done. And also the subreddit at r/FPSZ. So
We should
all of us
also,
here,
we should also mention our Arena FPS.
Yes, our
Doesn't
Arena
mean-
FPS, definitely.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yes, our friends Neeple and the whole crew at our Arena FPS who have
Reddit
been wonderful. Did we already say that? Well, we're saying it again.
Just to make, because when you said that, I was like, what is he talking about? Our Arena FPS? Yeah, /r/Arena FPS on Reddit.
Absolutely. Yes, go check them out. And they have a weekly video that they do on YouTube as well that's also worth looking into. So from... on behalf of all of us here, we want to thank everybody for listening, and we will see you next time on the Z-Axis. Oh, thanks to Fixus before we go, who puts all this together and keeps the websites going and keeps the interest going in these sorts of games. So he does a lot behind the scenes. So thank you, Fixus. And thank you, everybody, for watching and listening. We will see you next time on the Z-Axis. Have a great night, morning, whatever.